And between the two of them, they ganged up on me on the other side. This is my story. They ganged up on me on the other side, and they said, right, Sunny, listen. And really, this is what happened, is the way that they came to me was, you have something that can help people. And all you've ever wanted to do in your life is to help others.
Mm-hmm.
And yet you won't do it.
You're
And
scared. Yeah.
that was pretty, like, it was true. And I wouldn't do it because they weren't giving me the way to help them the way I wanted to. I didn't want to do it in a weird way. I wanted to
Right.
do it in a normal way. And then finally I said, you know what? Okay, I'm just going to embrace this weirdness and recognize that it's not weird. It's natural. It's normal. It's
Yes.
healthy. And I just had to change my perspective on it. And I couldn't do that in the box that I was trying to fit myself in.
Welcome to Far Out with Faust, everybody. I am Faust Chicho, and today I'm excited and delighted to be joined by Sunny Dawn Johnston. Let me tell you about this extraordinary woman and what she's been up to. Sunny's an inspirational speaker. She's a spiritual teacher and an internationally acclaimed psychic, medium, and author. She's been featured on numerous television and radio shows, including one of my favorites, Coast to Coast with George Norrie. In 2003, Sunny founded Sunlight Alliance, and it's a spiritual teaching and healing center in Glendale, Arizona. She also volunteers her time as a psychic investigator for the international organization, which is called Find Me. And that's a nonprofit organization of psychic, investigative, and canine search and rescue volunteers that work together to provide leads to law enforcement and families of missing persons and homicide victims, which is just extraordinary. I was introduced to Sunny's work, as I was just telling her, in 2019 when I saw her at the Celebrate Your Life conference in Sedona. And her work on archangels and everything she's doing it just blew me away then. And so it's a great pleasure to have you on, Sunny. Thank you so much for beaming in.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me and having me here. I love it.
Awesome. It's good to see you. So you've had such an incredible transformative experience, and I feel like because some of the archangel lore and mythology and understanding is also tied to a lot of religious text and sentiment, so you kind of have like there's two sides to everything that regards the word archangel, right?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And so I grew up Catholic, and I just knew I knew there was, I think, 4 we were told about, and they did some pretty crazy things for God, like things that you wouldn't think would be attached to the word angel.
Right. Exactly.
I was like, I was always scratching my head in Catholic school, and then I've come to learn more about the spirituality and metaphysics of the archangel and the energies and what I believe is their true purpose and how they serve. And you've had this incredible experience from the time you were young, and I know that it's a lot to get into, but maybe you could kind of give me like a slight version of how you came into this extraordinary knowledge and communion with the archangels.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, we go way back. I was 13 years old, and I was not raised in religion. I was raised around a lot of religion. My entire family on both sides was Mormon, LDS. I was raised in Salt Lake City, Utah. But my parents both left the church. And so I didn't have any kind of religious foundation. So I think that's important as kind of a backdrop to, how this whole thing opened up. So one particular night I went to bed, no different than any other night. And I woke up at 1:00 in the morning, and I saw what I would have described at 13 as just this colorful winged being floating above my bed. And I wasn't scared. I wasn't like, okay, what the hell is that? Like, nothing triggered anything fear based in me. It was more of, like, I felt like
Hmm.
peace and connection and love for sure. And so I literally just laid there for a little bit, and then I rolled over and went back to sleep. And it was just this amazing experience. I felt the energy of love, but then the colors I can't even describe with human words. And so I woke up the next morning. Then my head kicked in, and then I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh my god, what was that?" And I ran downstairs. Like, okay, something was in my room, and this is creepy. And because then the human part of us, I
Right.
didn't have time to catch that in that kind of twilight space. I ran downstairs. I told my mom what had happened, and she said, "Well, Sunny, that was your guardian angel." And I said, "I don't think I have one of those." She goes, "Well, of course you do. Everybody has a guardian angel. Oh, why wouldn't you have one?" And I said, "Well, I just don't think I do. If I had one, then none of the bad things that have happened in my life would happen, because isn't that what a guardian
Mm.
angel is supposed to do? Is like protect you from everything, right?" At my 13-year-old brain, that's what it
Wow.
thought. And she said, "Well, that's not really how it works, but of course this was your guardian angel." And I was like, "Oh, whatever." But what she said next is what actually opened me up to this entire realm. Is she said, last night I went into your bedroom and I prayed over you at 11 o'clock. And I asked God and the angels to keep you safe, because I've been worried about your mental and emotional health, which she had a right to be worried about it. And so what that did for me was it created this awareness in me that said, I not sure, I still didn't believe that it was angels,
Yeah.
but it said, I realized I had awakened to the manifestation of my mother's prayer. And I didn't even believe in prayer at that time. Like, anything about religion, I was surrounded in it and I couldn't stand it. So I didn't want
Mm.
anything to do with it. But what that did for me is it got me curious. And curiosity is what has led me down this path for the last, God, almost 40 years now. Um, and so that was the start of, I wonder what, because I knew that it was real. I knew it wasn't something I read in a book. I knew it wasn't something somebody was just telling me and I was trying to, recreate it. Like, I didn't ask for it. I didn't want it. And there it showed up. So that then started to open up doors. And so I was like, I want to feel that way again. Like, that feeling of like peace, and it was amazing. I'm like, okay, well, I want to feel that way again. I didn't know how to bring them back because I didn't
Yeah.
ask for them. But what I did was I just said, so if you're still there, could you come back? That was my prayer, really deep here.
Yeah.
And if you can come back, can you allow me to see you or feel you or experience you again? And they did.
Yeah.
And it just kept happening over and over and over again. As it happened over and over again, really what I did, Faust, is I became a student. And it was a very challenging and interesting experience, because I loved it and I thought it was so amazing. And at the same time, I was like, oh my God, this makes me more weird than I was before.
Mm.
And my goal in life was to figure out how to be a normal person, to be normal like everybody else. And so that was the conflict I went through for the next 15 years, quite honestly.
Wow. But there's such a lesson in what you just said, and I would be remiss if I didn't point it out, and I'm sure it would be pointed out in our conversation anyway. But when you asked, you received, and I feel like this is one of the biggest problems people run into when people ask, but then they don't stay and receive. They just kind of
Yes.
ask and they go about it. But
Mm-hmm.
if you ask and you quiet your mind and allow an answer,
Mm-hmm.
in my experience, you're going to feel something. You're going to, you may see something, you may hear something, but you're definitely going to get an answer. I've always got an answer, and I don't feel like I'm special in
Mm-hmm.
any way, that I'm doing something that no other human can do. I mean, I just learned to quiet my mind so I
Right.
could hear the answer.
Right.
And what an extraordinary lesson that you learned at such a young age. And of course, you know, at 13, my God, I have a 12-year-old, and it's like it becomes their mission to just be normal, just fit
Right.
in and not,
That was,
you
yes.
know.
Both to both of those points, I think that I agree with you. When you ask, it is given, but it isn't always given in the way you think that it's going to be. And so instead of trying to, for sure, I would be like, try to control it, manipulate it, and make it be the way I want it to be. And instead, I just had to be open. Right. And in that
Mhm.
openness, I think especially because I didn't know what I was doing. So I didn't know what the right way was. If I would have known what the right way was, I probably really would have screwed it up.
Yeah.
But I didn't know. And so I think openness. And then, because I didn't fit in that society, I didn't go to church. I wasn't like everybody else. I was ahead in grades, and I was overweight, and so I had all these other things that were going on that were just little boxes that I didn't fit in. And so with this one, it was like, okay, this is just gonna put me over the edge, and I'm never going
Mm.
to be able to be normal. And that actually was, I mean, I think that the resistance for that 15 years was beneficial in the long run, but it sucked when I was in
I'm
it
sure. Yeah.
because it was so cool, and it was so empowering, and at the same time it caused me so much pain in the humanness of being the teenager and being the young adult and not being normal, and recognizing, so a few months after that happened, I also started seeing not just angels and not having
Mm.
them come to me, but also deceased energies.
Wow.
And so I had an experience once. I was 15, my girlfriend, or I mean, I was 13. My girlfriend's grandfather had just died, and we were sitting, hanging. I think we were playing, because back in the day, when you
Yeah,
were
that's
13,
right.
we still
Went
played.
outside and played.
Right, you
Remember those
played.
days?
Like kick the can and like
Yes.
things like we played.
Anything.
And so I wasn't hanging out; I was playing.
Right.
And I saw her grandfather next to her, and I said, "Your grandfather is right here." And she turned around and she said, "Sunny, he just died 2 weeks ago." And I said, "I know, but he's standing next to you." And she was creeped out, of course, because she wouldn't have any reason not to
Yeah.
be. And
Wow. How
then
old were you when that happened?
13. That
Wow.
was right after the angel experience. It was a couple months, 2 or 3 months. And then she was my friend any longer.
Wow. Oh, well, yeah. She was
And
freaked out, I'm sure.
And then
Yeah.
word spread, right?
Yeah.
So then word spread. Okay, so Sunny, that house on the corner, that's the weird
I'm
house. And
sure.
Sunny is doing these kind of weird, crazy things and thinking she's talking to people. And so I learned in the same experience of a few months where I learned, oh my God, there's this amazing connection that feels so good. I also learned at the same time that it wasn't safe for me to be me. It
Yeah.
wasn't safe for me to talk. It wasn't safe for me to share because people couldn't handle it and I would lose.
Yeah.
And literally I lost friends. I lost a sense of myself. And at the same time I was gaining. So it was a very
Mm.
complex circumstance. And then, that age, I mean, none of us want to go back to that age, you know?
No.
So I do think it helped me to experience so much contrast in my life that at the time was difficult, but now I can see how valuable and how beneficial it was. And luckily, I was strong enough to kind of push through it.
Yeah.
You know.
So that was well, I guess technically your clairvoyant ability was, obviously that's what allowed you to see
Mhm.
the angel as well.
Yeah.
And so maybe like when you saw the grandfather, like you weren't freaked out at all, huh? Like were you just like
I was just like, there he is.
and you had a sense of who he must be?
Well,
Is that
I
how?
knew him because
Oh, you
he
had been over the house maybe
he
when.
was my friend. Yeah, he was my friend's grandpa.
Oh,
So I'd
okay.
met him before and I knew he had died, but it didn't even occur to me, like, Sonny, don't say that. It didn't
Right.
occur to me to not, it was just like, well, there he is. And then as soon as I said it and saw her face, I was like, oh,
Oh,
that wasn't
yeah.
good. And I had been in training the last 3 months or so with the angels where they were coming to me. I was feeling the different energies. I was experiencing them in ways through visual and auditory and mostly sensing.
Mm-hmm.
mostly feeling the energy and emotions. And so I was in what I felt like was kind of like class, but it
Mm.
wasn't a class I could talk about. And so when that happened, it was just another experience. I just forgot that, oh, yeah, we don't talk to human beings about this right now.
Right.
And so it was not out of the ordinary. And, I had a ghost that lived in my house. We called her a ghost, and she lived on the stairs, and my brother and I both saw her. And so it wasn't unusual in my house with my
Mm-hmm.
mom and my brother and I. But it was, I didn't recognize that it was going to be as big of a deal as it was until
Right.
it was.
So as you grew up and got into your teenage years, obviously this is of course going to create not only an internal struggle, but a lot of different feelings and things to deal with as you're growing up in society. But did your mediumship, your ability to see spirits, did that continue through your teenage years? Did it start to did you try to push it away? How did you deal with that on top of growing up?
Mhm. I pushed it
I'm just
away.
so curious. Yeah, I pushed it away.
I
Okay.
pushed it away. I actually pushed the angels away too. I did a dance, and the dance was, okay, this is really cool. Okay, no, I just want to be normal. And then I just kind of focus on life. Then I would get to a place in my life where I was struggling, and I would ask for help, and then it would be really cool again. And I would
Mm,
be in that space for a little while. And then I would get into my head and go, okay, yeah, this, I just want to be normal. And I would push away. And then I'd have another experience because I'm a little bit of a slow learner back then, and then need help and then ask. And I think where I really started to, well, where I had a major experience at the age of 18. And that's what actually was very clear that, okay, Sunny, you have something that maybe you don't understand, nobody else
mm,
understands, but it's happening, and you can't control it. I thought I could control it, like go away and then come
yeah.
back and go away and come back. And what I realized is that they never went away. I went away.
Mm,
Right? My angels never left. I left. And so I could go back, and I did that. But when I was 18, I was pregnant, and my boyfriend was an alcoholic already at 19. And so when I found out I was pregnant, and I was on birth control pills, so I was very angry that I could get pregnant on birth control pills. And so I had a lot of anger and rage, and I didn't want a baby. I never planned to have children. Like, I wasn't really that kind of mom, a kid, like those kids that babysit and stuff. I
yeah.
wasn't that kid. So, so when I got pregnant, and within the first couple months, I developed toxemia. So I was on complete bed rest. And within a couple of months, I developed then preeclampsia, which turned into eclampsia. So really, I was fighting for my life and the life of my baby at that time. And during that time, I really pushed all of the support from the angels out. Like, I felt ashamed, so growing up in Salt Lake City, you don't get pregnant. You don't have sex
Yeah.
before marriage. And so there was so much shame in my family, and judgment and criticism, that I just felt so much shame and guilt, and then anger and resentment, that I shut everything out, and I got sicker and sicker and sicker.
Mm.
And when I went to deliver my son, uh, I my blood pressure went so high that I had a stroke.
Oh my God.
And so they did an emergency C-section. And when they did the emergency C-section, they weren't sure that the baby was going to survive. They got him out in time, and he did, and he was healthy. But
Okay.
I ended up extremely sick. I had 106.3-degree temperature for almost 3 weeks.
Wow.
So I had an infection that was from my breasts to my knees, literally eating my skin away. It was eating me from the inside out, basically. And they couldn't find a source of it.
Wow.
And so there was a particular day. It was a Saturday, and the doctors came in and they said, "We've tried every medication we can. We've done every antibiotic. We need you to sign your rights to your son over. We need to know who he goes to if you
If
don't make
something
it through the
happens,
night."
yeah. My God.
Yeah.
Jesus, that's
And so it was
serious.
serious. And and I didn't realize I was very naive. So I kind of thought, first of all, this was in 1990. I thought
Yeah.
people don't die of baby. Like that's not something that happens in my naive mind, right?
Right.
Like well, I'm not going to get sick. I'm not that sick. And if you got sick, you went to the hospital and the hospital made you better. That was my simplification of what was happening. And then when they came in and said, no, we're not sure you're going to actually make it through the night. Then I realized, oh, like I'm really sick. And I was out of consciousness too most of that time. And for
Mm-hmm.
any of you that have ever been in that place, I was above my body. I wasn't even present. Like my nurse, I had a male nurse, which was really embarrassing to me when I was in my humanness because
Yeah.
I was 18. But I don't even know what his face looks like, but I can tell you the calyx on his head
Wow.
because I was literally above him that entire time. And so after the doctors came in and I was by myself the whole time because my mother had now had a baby to take care of.
Mm.
Um,
That's the worst. Waking up when you wake up in a hospital alone, it's like
yeah,
such a sinking
it is.
feeling,
You're on
of
your own.
loneliness. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wouldn't let the angels come in. I would not. I pushed it all away. I could feel and I just pushed like, nope. And there was a piece of like, I don't deserve this. Like
Yeah.
I'm bad and wrong because I had a baby and you're not supposed to and all the things. But what happened was after I realized how sick I was and nobody was there, like no one was coming to see me, even the father, like
Yeah.
I was on my own. And then I had this awareness of, you got to ask, you got to ask, Sunny. And so I did, I asked, I said, okay, I need help. I don't know. And immediately this brilliant green light force energy showed up in my room.
Wow.
And it was Archangel Raphael. And he said, breathe in my light. And
Wow.
so I literally, for 12 hours, so I was strapped down because the infection was so painful that they had my arms strapped down. So I was kind of in open position, right? Like I am open. I was kind of
Yeah.
forced that way. And so for 12 hours, he had me he had me breathe in, and I would see breathing in that green energy.
Mm.
And then I would see me breathing out what I would describe as like tar.
Mm.
I did that for 12 hours, and this was almost 3 weeks. And the next morning, the doctors came in, and it was the first time my fever had broke
Wow.
in 3 weeks. And they had taken me off the medications.
Wow.
And that was
Incredible.
actually Mother's Day.
Wow. What a synchronicity.
Mm-hmm.
That's
And so
amazing.
I checked myself out of the hospital the next day. I was still very, very sick, but I had decided if I was going to die, they weren't doing anything for me anyway, and I was going to go see my baby because I wasn't allowed to see him from the time
Yeah.
he was 2 days old, and it was a long journey. But what that gave me was, okay, I knew that I was the one that was leaving. I knew they weren't leaving. I was, and that I had to take responsibility for. And you would think, right? You would think, okay, that's when she started getting real. No, that's not when it happened.
No, I don't think. Yeah.
No, it took me another 10 years.
Someone else might think, but I
Right.
wouldn't.
Yeah. No, it took me another 10 years, but over that 10 years, I really started to learn and embrace. And that's when I was 28 is when I actually opened up to the mediumship, opened up to the angels. And I think that sometimes life happens in interesting ways, right? And I was so against being different. Back in that day, we didn't have somebody like you who was going to bring all of these experiences out into the world. We didn't
Right.
have podcasts. We didn't have television that ever talked about, I mean, ETs were like a movie, and there was nothing real about it, right? Like you couldn't talk about angels like you can talk to them. You couldn't talk to dead. That was just not a thing. And so, but when I was 28, I had two experiences. My grandmother died, and my ex mother-in-law, who I was quite close to, I was with her when she died. And after they died, they haunted me from the other side.
Wow.
And pushed and pushed and pushed and said, it's time for you to do your work. Like, get over yourself. Stop thinking you're supposed to be something different and just be who you really are. And
Wow.
and through a lot of force and pressure, really, being pushed into a corner, really,
Yeah.
I finally gave in.
So wow. So they transitioned, and of course then they they were able to see what was going on with you probably
In
very,
a
very
greater way.
clearly.
Neither
Yeah.
one of them could see it either way. My grandmother was an alcoholic who had Alzheimer's,
Hmm.
and she actually walked out of her care facility and froze to death.
Oh
And
my
so she had a
God.
very tragic ending. But in that tragic ending, I was able to. She came to me,
Mm.
because this is something. It's a gift I have, but I didn't like the gift. I was returning the gift.
Mm.
And so she came to me, and then my ex mother in law. Um, I was with her when she died, when she took her last breath, and I felt her spirit literally move through my body, and I was
Hmm.
changed that day. And between the two of them, they ganged up on me on the other side. This is my story. They ganged up on me on the other side, and they said, "Right, Sunny, listen." And really, this is what happened. Is the way that
Yeah.
they came to me was, "You have something that can help people, and all you've ever wanted to do in your life is to help others,
Hmm.
and yet you won't do it."
You were
And
scared. Yeah.
that was pretty, like, it was true. And I wouldn't do it because they weren't giving me the way to help them the way I wanted to. I didn't want to do it in a weird way. I wanted to
Right.
do it in a normal way. And then finally I said, you know what? Okay, I'm just going to embrace this weirdness and recognize that it's not weird. It's natural. It's normal. It's
Yes.
healthy. And I just had to change my perspective on it. And I couldn't do that in the box that I was trying to fit myself in. And I think a
That's
lot of us do that.
yeah. No, absolutely we do. And then we're scratching our head and kicking the can down the road with our heads down, wondering why we're so unhappy. But we have
Yeah,
not quite figured out that we're unhappy because we're not living our lives, we're living someone else's,
exactly.
and it has to do with society and upbringing and belief systems.
And all
But
the training
mhm,
and religious, even though I wasn't religious, all the religion around me, it really affected me. And so I think that for those of you that are listening today, it's really important to recognize, maybe there's some gifts that you have. I felt like it was a curse, quite honestly, when I was younger, but there may be gifts that you just haven't embraced yet. And the question is, when?
yeah, not now when.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So this tag team is so fascinating to me because of course when people so my older brother passed away in January, and he had he was handicapped in a lot of ways. He was a very premature baby, and so
Mm-hmm.
he was born with a lot of difficulties, and difficulties manifested as health problems as he got older.
Mm-hmm.
And when he passed, I felt a very similar experience. I felt his I wasn't there, but I had seen him a few days before that, and I felt his spirit move through me. And now when I get a sense of him and tune into him, there's nothing. He just is. There's no handicap. There's
Right.
no anything,
Mm-hmm.
because of course that has to do with this the physical you know container that he took on when
Mm-hmm.
he came into this life for his own reasons.
Right.
And it so it's just remarkable to me. You have a grandmother who went from having Alzheimer's to, okay, there's a perfectly lucid ghost haunting you now. Who it's just amazing. People never think about that. So
Well,
so
it's such a gift too, because I think that when like she came to me, so she drank beer every single day of her life from 17
wow.
until she was well, till after she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and then she forgot she drank.
Wow, really?
So for 4 years, Alzheimer's caused her to forget that she drank. And so then for 4 years, we didn't have an alcoholic in
Holy
the
shit.
sense of the drinking any longer. So we didn't have that sadness and that depressiveness. She was
Mm,
actually, as much as it was difficult because she didn't recognize you, she was also free.
yeah.
And so we got to experience 4 years with her. And then one day, she had tried to take her life many times throughout
Yeah.
her life. And this time she walked out of her facility, and she was driven, like you could tell she was going somewhere.
Yeah.
She was going because she was going to freedom. She was going home.
Yeah.
And she came back and she said, I never had a voice my entire life. And
Mm,
now you're going to be my voice.
Wow.
And it was about, speaking up and expressing yourself. And it was also about connection. And it was about, I'm fine now. I'm good. And I could have laid in the bed for 5 more years
Right.
and lost my mind more and more and more and died, and nobody would have ever known anything. But because I went out this way, it caused attention. We changed laws. We made different, we went and spoke at Senate hearings. Like, we did all kinds of things that made a difference in other people's lives because she finally found her voice in a way that nobody would ever think of it that way.
Right.
And
right.
and now she's free, like your brother. Like, there is nothing that's holding them back. They're just that love, light energy. But they chose those experiences to expand and create greater awareness, even when it doesn't seem like it.
Yes, there's so much going on. There's so much we can't quite comprehend. Many times until decades later. But as it happens, we have such a limited perspective most of the time in these bodies of ours. And I don't get me wrong, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I love it, but it's amazing. Something to keep in mind. There's so much going on that you can't see, and I believe that it's always for the betterment in one way or another, even if that seems impossible,
Yeah, the higher, greater good, even when it feels like the most painful experience you're walking. And I think, what the angels have helped me to see is that if I can have that experience down the road, look back and see 2020, what if when I'm in it, I ask to be able to see it now?
Yeah.
Allow me to recognize the purpose behind what is happening. And so I always ask Archangel Uriel. Uriel's the one that helps me with that bigger perspective of things. And let me see the bigger perspective now, or get a sense of it at least. I might not have the whole picture, but give me something give me a little bone here, something that I can hold on to. And that is what then helps me to be able to rise out of the humanness of it and go higher. Because so many times we get stuck in the lower of it and we need to go higher.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that, that it's a great point to make. And for anyone listening, ask in the moment, there's no harm in asking, for clarity,
Well, and to your point at the very beginning, when you ask, it is given, it is received. You will receive it in some form.
Yeah. I love this about the way you teach, for people who are listening, who maybe this sounds a little, woo to them, but they've heard of guardian angels, because everyone's heard of guardian angels, and maybe they, have a religious background and went to catechism classes on Sunday or whatever, and they know of archangels or angels, but, it's always fascinating to me that people wonder, well, okay, what's the difference between like angels, guardian angels, and archangels? And I obviously, I have my own ideas, and but I would love to hear you explain that a little bit for some of my audience.
Sure. And I'll even add in spirit guides and deceased energies.
Oh yes, please. You're reading you took it right off my page. Are you? Yeah, go for it.
So what is the difference? So I think, to give a simple answer, the difference is frequency. It's vibration. But to kind of break that down a little bit, those of us that are in body, so we are a spirit, light energy, into a body, physical container, dense energy. So we're more dense. We have the spirit within us, which is the lightness, but the body is the humanness that makes our vibration, our frequency, more dense. That's why things have to manifest in physical form. Where in spirit world, there needs to be no physical, right? Because it's energy. It's all energy. So here we are. We're at the low end. We're down at we're the bottom feeders, right, so to speak, right? Because we're dense. And remember, not dense here, the body. Right. So when we drop our body, when we die, we go up a vibration where our frequency raises simply because we dropped the body. Doesn't matter how great of a body you had, doesn't matter if the body was sick or not, your frequency automatically raises. So when it raises, if you were somebody that was a real shitty person in this human world, your frequency still is going to raise.
That's right.
Drop the body. Doesn't matter if you were shitty or not. It's still
Right.
going to raise. And if you were a fantastic person, one of the most loving people in the world, your frequency is going to raise too. And there's going to be a variable degree of higher and lower energy based on if you were lower in the human realm,
Right.
then you're going to be lower here, but it's still higher than where we are. Okay. So that's where our kind of deceased loved ones energy is. Then if we decide, if we, part of our soul's journey is to support others, be a guide or a teacher or a helper in some way, then our frequency, we move a little bit higher frequency, and we're a teacher or a guide for others. So that can be ancestrally connected. So it could be family members, we could be spirit guides that way, or it could be people that are walking a similar journey as we've walked, and we help support and guide from that perspective. So that frequency is just a little bit higher. Then we get into the angels and the archangels, the ascended masters, and their frequencies are higher frequencies. So the ascended masters, they had a body. Okay, so the spirit guides, they had a body, they dropped their body, they chose to be a teacher. Ascended masters, they had a body, they dropped their body, they raised their frequency, and my perception of this is ascended masters gained all the qualities necessary. They've gone through all the experiences, life journeys, to have the qualities necessary to ascend, to rise to the highest frequency as that physical being can. Then we've got the angels and the archangels, and those frequencies are even higher. Okay. Then we have the God of your understanding, source energy, creator. And we're here. This is our energy.
Right.
And we want to connect with these energies and these beings. What we have to do is raise our frequency, raise our vibration. And how do you do that? Because people are like, okay, well, tell me, I'll do that. Yeah. Well, how do you do that? It's one simple answer that's hard, and that is joy.
Joy and love. Yeah.
Okay. Because joy is the highest expression of love. And we don't think that, because our training is, well, don't have joy until you've done all your chores. Don't have joy until you've figured out all your stuff. You can't have joy until you've paid off all your bills and all your credit cards. Then you can have joy. Right. No, joy is what you are. It is what's innate within you. And so the angels, what they taught me is that is what I have to have. Joy is the thing that you need. Love is the thing. And then from there, that's going to raise your frequency. Then you can connect with the angels. You can hear them, see them, feel them, know them, the spirit guides, your deceased loved ones. It's just a practice of frequency.
This is such a great reminder for me. Because I know that, but when you get stuck, when you get into a routine and the stresses of life and the chaos in the world, especially when, part of what you do is, kind of keep one thumb on the pulse of that chaos. It's a great reminder. And I'm getting a lot of those lately. So I know this conversation is synchronistic, and if it's synchronistic for me, I know that it's synchronistic for a lot of people. But, I was just watching, somebody was talking about the rainbow body and how, there's this monastery in Tibet that, and they've documented this. It's pretty phenomenal, but if you can go, I think it's like 13 years without having a single negative thought, if you can remain in a state of joy and compassion and serenity for 13 years, then you can achieve and activate your rainbow body. That's what they say. And then what happens when these monks pass is like this, the body, their physical body it's like a movie almost. It's like their physical body like shrinks to, it's crazy. What
probably just transmutes, I would imagine.
Totally. And I was like, wow, there really is so much to it. And of course they believe in the cities, the powers that come with that kind of a frequency elevation, being telepathic and all kinds of different things. So it's just it's so fascinating. It's a good reminder to try to remain in a state of joy, even with everything that's happening.
And choose. I was teaching a class this morning, and I was telling the story about the old man who's got a war going on inside of him, and he's got the wild dog on one side, and he's got the eagle on the other side. And the wild dog is the nasty, judgmental, critical, mean energy, and the eagle is the loving, kind, gentle presence. And the grandson says, "Well, who's going to win the war?" And the grandpa says, "Whichever one I feed."
Yeah, whichever wolf you feed.
Whichever wolf I feed, whichever animal I feed. And so I think that we have to remember, like, I'm like, oh, 13 years? Well, I got some work to do. Yeah. We got to get to our body and our rainbow body in 13 years. Right. I might have to come back a couple more times still, you know?
Yeah.
But we can start with a day. We can start with an hour, and we can continue to progress, because I think it's so easy, especially when we're looking at social media and the way the news is and things like that. It is so easy to just fall into what everybody's doing and listen to all the bullshit and all the stories and all the garbage that's out there, instead of listening to what's true within us. And nobody, it's interesting because people really struggle when I say you got to have joy.
Yeah.
They're like, well, yeah, but there's people suffering in the world. Yes, there is. That's an even more of a reason to have joy.
Yeah, I was literally just having this conversation. I was like, you can know what's happening in the world and still, you know, you don't remain above it, but no. you hold on to the love in your heart, because let me tell you something, that's a black hole, you know, that if you get sucked into it, that's all. I mean, you could spend the rest of your time lamenting the shape of this world. There's enough to lament.
And there has been forever. There's always been the generation ahead of us. Oh my God, we're going to, you know, like there always has been that. There always will be.
Yeah.
What are you going to feed?
That's right. Because and then that's going to affect what shows up in your life. And so I'm like, why would you want to, you know, don't let the New York Times and the newspaper be what's going to decide how next week goes for you and what's going to happen in your life. Stop, put it down, you know, start creating from a place of consciousness and love, and then you'll be surprised. I mean, that's my experience. And
the reason that we're having more attention on the negative is because there is more TV and news and stations and podcasts and things to watch. Now, we do have a counterbalance. There are other options, but the fear is what gets people's attention. And then the fear is what keeps their attention. And so then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, which is why for those of us that are really working and intending and focusing so much on the love, and then we can get frustrated with what's going on over there, and then we're right there with them. So don't do that. No, that's what the angels say. Don't do that.
Yeah. Don't do that. Don't participate. It's you know, it's hard being a human on this planet. I mean, in most places, you know, I know why they say location. I guess because if some places you're born and there's very few of them left, you know, you're just kind of, you're not exposed to any of this. Life is a lot simpler. And I imagine that it's a lot, you know, easier in a lot of ways. But
we didn't, if we're here on this planet, we did not sign up for easy.
Yeah, no, that's for sure.
No, we didn't sign up for easy. We're the A+ students that said, give it to me, Al. Let's see what you can do.
Fast track? Where do I sign up?
That's right.
I don't know if you're ready. There you go. You're off.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's been the story of our humanity, I guess. It's incredible. So you're doing a lot with your organization, and you know, it's amazing to me how people are still, I mean, it's not amazing to me because we live in such a materialist, backwards world, that people are taught to, you know, plug into the five senses, and that's all there is. So it doesn't surprise me, but I deal with a lot of skeptics. They are legion, you know, and it's like,
well, and that's got to be hard, you know, when you're in a frequency. I know that was part of why I wanted to be normal, is I didn't want to have to deal with the energy of what and how people felt about something that they didn't understand. I didn't want that. So it was selfish. I was really trying to save myself. Like, you know, I don't want to feel that. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with those people. And at the same time, now I can see that, you know, and for people like you and for people that are out there that are bringing to light different things, tools and techniques and environments and layers of frequency and energy that could possibly be here to support,
Yeah.
to grow, to connect, to heal, to love, to all the things, um, that it takes. Number one, it takes all of us,
Yeah.
and that when we're not doing it, we're living in the same fear as everybody else, just in a different way.
Mm.
And so we have to have the courage and be brave to stand in what's true for us, even though there are people that might be skeptical or might, tear you apart, which they do.
Yeah.
And it's your choice if you let them, and you still go on. And that can be hard. It can be scary. I know that's why I avoided it.
Naturally, it's a kind of a survival
Yeah.
mechanism.
Yeah.
I
But then
was
you get
just,
to a place where you go, you know what? Um, I can't live with myself if I don't.
yeah.
Right. And so instead of avoiding skeptics, for me, cool. I'm cool if you're a skeptic. It doesn't matter if you're a skeptic at all. I'm not here to prove anything to everybody.
Right.
I don't care to prove anything. What I care to do is just bring to light my experience and what I've become aware of and what my journey has been. And if it resonates with you, cool. And if
Yeah.
it doesn't, that's fine. So give me the same respect.
And the truth is, most true skeptics, they long to be convinced.
Yeah.
They want to be convinced.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, their criteria to be convinced often leaves them at odds with ever being convinced.
For
Um,
sure.
and I was just talking about this with somebody. It's so fascinating. And the initial conversation I had was with Mark Anthony. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He's
Yeah.
also
I know Mark Anthony.
yeah. I had a feeling you heard of him. You probably met him.
Mm-hmm.
Great, very wonderful man, very intelligent. But we were talking about how the doctrination of religion took what was understood to be this beautiful thing of life and rebirth and death being just another doorway to the next life, and how that was never going to jive when religion became government.
Mm-hmm.
Back in in the Roman times, it wasn't long before Christianity and the Vatican and all these things became the power. So you had the emperor and the pope, right?
Yeah.
And basically between the two of them, they were in charge.
They had all the control.
They did have all the control. And there's a great story about Pope Vigilus, I think, and Emperor, what was his name? Augustine, I think. Anyway, he was the Byzantine Empire, but he went to the Pope and he was, because he had been talking to the bishops and they were like, "Listen, this isn't working. Okay, because at the time, reincarnation was still very much part of the early Christian beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
which I would say naturally, And they were like, wait a minute, if people think that and know that they're just going to continue to have another chance at this,
Mm-hmm.
why would they then believe that they're going to be punished when they die, for their sins?
Right.
Why would
Things
they?
we don't want them to do.
Yeah, why would they take heed and listen to their emperor and their pope? Why would they pay taxes? Why would they be afraid to die if they know they're just going to be born again? This is not going to work.
Right.
And you
Right.
see, like, the fear of death that we have instilled in our society has everything to do with materialism
Yeah.
and this hypnotic trance we seem to be in with just the five senses that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a problem.
Yeah.
It's a big problem, I think. And I think the sooner we can find a way to re-educate our young people and ourselves about the truth of this reality,
Mm-hmm.
the less problems we're going to have, because you cannot control someone who knows what they are, what they
Right.
truly are,
Right.
because they're not afraid. They're not going to be pushed and prodded and manipulated the way someone who doesn't know what and who they are will be.
Yeah. The fear doesn't work the same way. The fear
No.
tactics don't work the same way. And I think we got a real good example of that over the
Mm-hmm.
last few years, and
Absolutely.
how that shows up. And the reality of it is, for me, it doesn't matter to me how you choose to believe. Like, cool, you can believe whatever you want.
Right.
The reality of it is, though, in if you are struggling and you're uncomfortable and you don't want to be there, you can recognize, okay, where am I giving my fear to? And there's so much ingrained training into this is the way that it is, and this is the box that you're in, and this is why it is. And that control, power, and money were the central focus of all of it, all of it. And it still is. And people don't like that answer. And, they don't like me to say that answer at all. But that is the reality of it. And it doesn't allow people the freedom. And there are some maybe extensions of religion that are more freedom based and less manipulative and controlling. But I think that's why so many people have gone more to spirituality, because they know the connection. They want the connection. They don't want all the bullshit in between it.
That's right. And no one should have to go to anyone else to talk to God.
No, because it's not necessary.
No, it's not. But they need you to believe that, or else they become irrelevant and obsolete. And then, don't get me wrong. They probably already amassed enough money. No one ever needed to give a dime again, and they would still have enough to be, a force in the world that they are. But it's just crazy to me. I mean, I was raised in it, so I scratched my head and asked a lot of questions that they didn't have answers for growing up, but I never really understood how, especially when I hit my teenage years and I started to have, natural teenage boy inclinations. I was like, I don't understand how this is free will.
Right.
Because it seems to me like I'm going to be punished for eternity if I go ahead and do what I want, which is my will,
Right.
And it never
and why it's bad, right? Like that was the training is okay. This is just like it was so ingrained in me, and I wasn't even in the religion.
Yeah.
But I think, I have a kind of funny story that kind of pulls this all together too, because you had a Catholic background, and even though I wasn't Mormon, I have a big Mormon background. Mm-hmm. When I was 12 years old, right before this experience, actually, it was about maybe a year before I actually saw my guardian angel. I had a slumber party and for my birthday. And so there was like 15 girls there. And we started talking about religion. Well, everybody's Mormon, except for I had one Greek Orthodox girl.
Oh, boy.
And then I had one person that didn't really have a religion. She was kind of like me. She was raised in religion, but then kind of her family pulled away. And so we started talking about religion, and all the rest of them are Mormon. So we have this conversation, and I'm like, well, the Bible is just a bunch of stories anyway. So this is my 12-year-old self, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just an interpretation by a man, if you can't tell.
Right.
And so I just went on and on and on. And they all got really, really mad. And some of them just went to bed, and then some of us had this big thing. And one of my girlfriends says, well, my bishop tells me if I ever have questions that I can call and ask him anytime. I said, all right, call him. It was 4 in the morning. So
do you have the number?
I said, call him. Let's ask him. I want to know why I should believe. And this conversation was that when a man dies in the Mormon church, when a man dies and they have been sealed to their family through the temple, that him and the wife get a secret name. And when the man dies, when the woman finally dies, then he calls her over by the secret name. And I said, but what happens if the woman dies?
Yeah.
And they said, well, the woman has to wait until the man comes over. And I had a problem with that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, why? I want to know why that is, because the woman's just going to sit and spin for 30 years. Like, I didn't get it. So let's call your bishop. So we called the bishop at 4 a.m. And the question was, okay, why is this? And he said, you ask too many questions. You just need to believe.
Yeah.
And I said, believe what? And he said, believe like the prophecy or something like that. And I said, well, if you gave me some information as to why I should believe that, then maybe that would be helpful. Within 15 minutes, all of the parents were there to pick up their kids.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. Now that's a great memory. I'll never forget it.
Big trouble.
But it shows you, even then, I was that person, right? I was that one that was like, wait, just explain to, like, let's think about this. In my 12-year-old mind, let's think about this. What is she going to do? Float around?
Yeah.
Like, no, she doesn't have permission to go until her husband says she can. So I think that when you have these backgrounds and you go, okay, some of this doesn't make sense. It's just total control and totally a man decided it, because if a woman decided it, the woman's not going to float around.
Right.
So it's human. It's human.
Yeah.
So when we start to think of that and all the boxes that we've created, we've got to jump through this hoop and this hoop to be okay. When the reality is we're freaking born as love and
Yeah.
light, and that's who we are, and we've been okay the whole time. Wow,
Yeah.
that doesn't people can't accept it.
If only, if only they could. I mean, there's so many, and I think about the journey I've been on, and how people could have come up to me and been like, "But you're okay right now." I've been like, "Yeah, but," I mean, you can be in search of and on to the next, but also know without a shadow of a doubt that you are perfect the way you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone thinks that they're broken, and they're not. They're just in
Mm-hmm.
a state of evolution, and
We're just expanding
it's just a
constantly.
difference. It's a big difference in perception.
Growth and learning. And that's what the angels have always said is your love and your light, period. And you are worthy and deserving simply because you are here.
That's right.
Period. You did not need to do one thing. You didn't need to make your bed. You didn't need to go to church. You didn't need to have the 2.2 kids. You didn't need to do any of it. You're already perfect as you are. And you are here to grow and expand in that
Yeah.
perfection. But we see perfect and we hear it differently than what it's meant
Yeah.
to be from that realm. It's that we're on the perfect journey for us, not that we have the perfect size and the
Right.
perfect money and all of that, but we don't know how to equate that because of the training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because of the belief systems in place.
Yep.
We
Yep.
crazy ideas about
Yep.
perfect.
Sure.
It gets a lot of people into trouble and causes a lot of unhappiness needlessly.
Yeah, suffering.
Yeah.
Suffering. And I suffered for decades with those kinds of experiences and pain, even though I wasn't even raised in it. That's what's so interesting.
My God, I mean, I know. I imagine. I mean, I remember being 13 years old, praying. I was in a deep state of depression because I was convinced that I had already, committed enough quote, mortal or cardinal sins that there was no redemption. I mean, some of the sins that I had committed even at 13, I was like, I can't tell the priest this. And not that they were so bad, but according to what I had learned,
Right.
they were highly illegal and offensive.
Yes, I stole a chapstick from Grand Central, and now I'm going to go to hell.
It's a cardinal sin. I'm like, I'm gonna burn in hell. I can't imagine what that's like, but maybe if I pray and and
do all the things,
mourn my soul long enough, people are like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, nothing. I'm going to hell.
I know.
It's traumatic for kids. My God.
And it's real. It's not like just okay. That's a funny. It's funny when we talk about it. It's not funny.
No, it's not funny when you're 13 and you believe it.
No, well, and you have a child, so imagine having your child feel like that is their existence
My
now.
God.
Where they're heading.
I think it was about a year and a half ago, maybe, and this gives you a good idea of my oldest. He's 12 now, but he's like Poppy. He calls me Poppy because my wife is Colombian. So I've grown to just love that, hearing that word. But he's like, Poppy, what's hell? And I was like, and I start laughing because here he was. I think he was probably 10 years old and he hadn't even heard the word yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it's nothing for you to ever worry about, my boy. It's just it's a mythology. And he was like, that's what I thought. And I was like, yeah, don't worry about it. It's like mythology. It's a Greek myth, It's a place where, and he was like, okay. And that was it. And I was like, and I see how light he is. His name is Luciano, which, has a lot to do with light, but he's very light most of the time. I mean, he's not burdened with all those belief systems that were,
exactly.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. And it's a gift. And, unfortunately, they don't know what they don't know. And so they didn't know, but we do. And some of your listeners and viewers, you do. And so if you know better, then you do better.
Yeah. Perfectly said. Absolutely. So Sunny, I call my show Far Out with Faust, and I love to take my guests a little farther out maybe than they're used to going. But I'm sure you've had some remarkable experiences having the abilities that you have, and I've heard some incredible talks about this, and I know that there's an intersection here between spirituality and metaphysics, and then also where some of our celestial relationships come from, and intertwined in all that on some plane is the extra some of the benevolent extraterrestrial races that I think you know act in kind of part and parcel with some of these other entities and energies that have helped, and are continuing to try to help lift the human race up. And I'm
Mhm.
just wondering if you've ever had any experiences that involve that kind of those kind of beings, or that, or does your mediumship also allow you to tap into any of that? Because sometimes mediums can, they can stick with the human plane, but they can also kind of tap into some of the greater galaxy and some of the relations that humans have out there.
Sure, sure. The galactics, yes.
Yeah.
Um, so in my mediumship, generally that doesn't come out. It isn't that it can't, and I'm sure that as I expand and grow, and people's consciousness and awareness of it expands and grows, that more of that will take place. So I'm quite open. I think
Hmm.
it's asinine to think that we are here on our own. I just That's probably a strong word. I
No,
probably
it's a
shouldn't
good
use,
word. It's a just word.
um, I
To
just
use
think
it.
it is. I have had experiences that I don't have conscious memory of all of the details of. And I've had experiences with other people where, like, literally, this was probably 10 years ago now. We were driving to an event I was speaking at in Las Vegas, and we it takes 5.5 hours to get there from Phoenix, maybe 5:15 if you're speeding. And I was more of a speeder then.
Hmm.
And we got there in 3 hours and 30 minutes, and we all lost a huge block of time. And we didn't ever
Wow.
experience a whole highway that you have to go in to go to Vegas. Like, we skipped the whole thing, the Hoover Dam, we skipped it all. We never went over
Wow.
it. And so we didn't have, but we all of us, and there's five of us in the vehicle, and we all had the same experience, but none of us have memory of anything that
Wow.
happened during that time.
Mm.
But then we had just crazy, crazy situations that entire weekend that were all galactically connected.
Mm.
People that would just come in and start talking to us about their experiences with galactics. We had experiences where a person disappeared in front of us and then reappeared, and we all saw it. We
Wow.
all experienced it. Like, it was just things that you're like, okay, not crazy in a bad way, but crazy in a, like, crazy, this is fucking
Yeah.
crazy. Look at my mouth. Sorry. Um,
Yeah.
this is cool. And so, but I don't have conscious memory of what the purpose was. It outside of, I think because it was a collective, it opened up the rest of the people's
Mm.
minds, because I was like, for sure, we had an experience. I just don't know what it was. And so I believe that because I don't have conscious awareness of it, it's not necessary for me to have it at
Hmm.
this point. But I am absolutely open to it. And I've had other experiences like that. Now, my mom is a star person,
Hmm.
self-proclaimed, and it's clear, like, she absolutely comes from the stars. And so I'm open to it, have been exposed to it most of my
Yeah.
life. But interestingly enough, I haven't had a lot of conscious experiences that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
And so I'm always open. I do readings and things with people who are galactic ambassadors,
Right.
and I love it. And I'm like, well, maybe this is my field, and that's okay. And if
Yeah.
not,
No.
then I'm
Absolutely.
open. But it's just other frequencies. It's just all light
That's
beings,
right.
and it's
Yeah.
just other frequencies. So if we get into that, it's just other higher frequencies that are helping, and don't have the limitation of the confines that we as human beings have created in our bodies and in our minds.
That's right. And I joke, but it's true. When you master gravity, you master time. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the two are they're linked. They
Mm-hmm.
cannot be separated. So if you can make one do what you want, you can make the other one do what you want as well. And I
Sure.
I think the human race. I hope that before our in our lifetime we can start to see some of what is, I think, more commonly understood, and underground and in these a
Yeah.
lot of the suppressed technologies that have been hidden. But no, you're
Man, I've
absolutely
been
right.
waiting.
Yeah,
I thought for sure that was going to open up in a much bigger way in the last 2 years.
yeah,
It really did. And it's still like, gosh, they're still keeping it quiet. Like,
yeah.
come on.
It's
You
just
know, so I'm a
absurd.
cheerleader for sure.
Nice, nice. No, I
Mhm.
think I think you're absolutely, you know, you're in your field, and you bring a wonderful, refreshing energy to what you do, and it's a joy to talk to you. So you absolutely answered my question perfectly, and I just want to comment and say it sounds to me like a classic abduction, even though you don't have memory of it. The time
Right.
lapse itself,
Hmm.
you know, I mean, like it's like when everybody, when I say everybody, when you have tens of thousands of people who have experienced kind of the same thing,
Yeah.
and a, a large percentage of them do remember sometimes the craft, you know,
Mhm.
some of them don't, some of them have just lost time, and then but it's like these experiences happen, and a lot of times it comes out, people have regression, then they start to remember everything.
Yeah.
They're like, oh my god. But it sounds like, and then everything that happened afterwards is the true
It was the
indication that,
validation for
yeah,
sure. And then
absolutely.
actually on the drive home, in the area that we didn't go through on the drive home, that I'm like, this is the area that we didn't go through. Then I actually saw four crafts. So I saw them
Yeah.
very clearly. So I'm like,
Wow.
okay, well, guys,
Oh
and
wow.
only two of the people out of the five that were in the vehicle could see them. But those three of us, I'm like, look, right there, 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 and there. And they were just boom. And then all of a sudden they just doo-doo-doo, doo-doo-doo,
Wow. Oh
and so
yeah, it's
we all
amazing.
watched it. So it for sure, absolutely. And I always just tell my spirit, and I think this is really kind of an important thing for anybody that's stepping into and opening up to their higher frequency connections, is that if I am meant to know, if I'm meant to remember it, it'll come through. Whether it comes through somebody else, whether it comes through me, whether I have flashes, whether I have I get regressed. Like if I need to know that piece of me, then and what happened, then it will show up
Yeah.
exactly when it needs to, because that's how it works.
Yeah.
Like that is how life works. So I just trust the process of it, and so I don't go out going, okay, well, I got to figure it out, because I've spent wasted a lot of time trying to figure shit out.
Yeah.
And so I don't try to figure it out. I just say it'll come to me and I'll feel it when it needs to.
That's right.
And I think that's oftentimes just an easier way to, because it doesn't make us so like we can just lose our minds trying to figure things out and
Yeah.
understand things that sometimes are not understandable in a human realm.
Yeah. And maybe you're not quite ready to understand them yet,
Right.
you know.
Right. Yeah, maybe that would have been distracting to me 10 years ago. I would have been like, "Oh my god, well, I'm going into this field now," and that might have not have been where my energy was meant to be, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
So, but I am super excited for whatever does decide to show up, or another experience does. Absolutely.
I'm sure it's on the horizon for you,
Mhm.
especially since you've invited it. But
Yes.
this has been amazing, Sunny. It's such a delight to finally talk to you, and it was such a pleasure. Um, you know, I always give my guests, especially when they're as profound as you, an opportunity to to give the gift to my audience, like of if there's one thing that you would like to, you know, because I talk a lot about programming in my and we see a lot of that, especially in the last 3 years of
Mhm.
how society programs us. And
Mhm.
I like to think that I'm doing some counter programming in
Mhm.
whatever way I can. And I know
Sure.
that the guests I have on have a lot to offer, like some code, you know. So
Mhm.
if you could offer some code to everyone listening, that would help them and allow them for greater ease and joy in this life, a little bit of understanding, what would you say to them? What code would you give them?
I would remind everybody we're already coded. We're coded in the vibration, the frequency of love and expansion. That's why we're here, and that there's lots of codes that are going to come up throughout your entire journey. And when it doesn't feel good, it's because it's not in alignment with the truth of who you are. And so many of these things that make you angry or sad or you're afraid of or you feel controlled or manipulated, it's because it's not real. It's not true. It is not the code. And it's just the way to um, um, for people to get what it is that they want from you, instead of you being your light and your love. So you're already coded. There's nothing you need to do outside of follow that. And anytime it feels out of alignment with who you are innately, it's not true for you, or it's not good for you. So, but then you have to have the courage to face that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the
Have the
hardest
courage
part
to face
sometimes.
it. It is. It
So,
is, because you might be pushed out of your circles, or out of your environments, or out of your families,
yeah.
or friend groups, etc.
Oftentimes. Yeah.
And then go find people that get it, and you'll be able to align back with what is really innate, because we're already, this is who we are. It's already inside of us. We don't have to do anything to get there.
Right. Right. And the moment that people decide to be true to themselves is the moment their world starts rearranging around them. You
It
know,
does,
there's
because then you say, the universe, you put it out there, you got a beacon going
that's
that's saying,
right.
oh, no, wait, I remember who I am now. And then all the things go, oh, yeah, you sure do. Here we go.
Always the universe is always
Yeah,
accommodating
absolutely.
who you
But
are
if you're in
being,
that
right?
fear place, then yes, the universe goes, oh, okay, that's what we're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's okay to have been in that, and then come back home. Come
That's
back
right.
home.
It's never too late.
It isn't. And
Yeah.
you got angels, and remember, ask for help. We have to ask.
Yes.
We got free will, we have to ask.
I was just reminding my 12-year-old that. I said, you gotta invite, you gotta ask. And he's
Yeah.
like, I know, I remember. I'm like, just reminding you,
Yeah. It's an
But
invitation.
well, thank you so much, Sonny. This has been awesome. I appreciate it. I'll
Wow.
be in touch. Tell everyone where to go if they want to if they want to learn more about you. If you have not, I forgot to mention, Sonny has an incredible book, which I always do this, and my editor's just going to edit it anyway. But she has an amazing book, Invoking the Archangels, a 9-step process that she wrote that I read. I read it long ago. I was reading it again. But tell them where to go if they want to learn more about you, Sonny.
So my website, sunnydawnjohnston.com. All the information's there. You can find me on social,
Yeah.
and I'm grateful to be here. Thank you for inviting me. It was a great conversation. I love it when it's not the same thing all the time. So thank you for
Yes.
having it be different.
You're very
Yes.
welcome. I'm so glad to hear that.
Yes. I appreciate it. It was
Wonderful.
awesome. Thank you, my friend. Thanks, everyone.
You take care. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Sonny.
Thank you.
Bye.
to connect with these energies and these beings, what we have to do is raise our frequency, raise our vibration. And how do you do that? Because people are like, okay, well, tell me, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Well, how do you do that? It's one simple answer that's hard, and that is joy.
Joy and love. Yeah.
Okay, because love, joy is the highest expression of love.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't think that, because our training is, well, don't have joy until you've done all your chores. Don't have joy until you've figured out all your stuff. You can't have joy until you've paid off all your bills and all your credit cards. Then you can have joy.
Right.
No, joy is what you are. It is what's innate within you. And so the angels, what they taught me is that is what I have to have. Joy is the thing that you need. Love is the thing. And then from there, that's going to raise your frequency. Then you can connect with the angels. You can hear them, see them, feel them, know them, the spirit guides, your deceased loved ones.
Yeah.
It's just a practice of frequency. Said is your love and your light, period. And you are worthy and deserving simply because you are here. That's period. Right. You did not need to do one thing. You didn't need to make your bed. You didn't need to go to church. You didn't need to have the 2.2 kids. You didn't need to do any of it. You're already perfect as you are. And you are here to grow and expand in that perfection. But we see perfect and we hear it differently than what it's meant to be from that realm. It's that we're on the perfect journey for us, not that we have, the perfect size and the perfect money and all of that, but we don't know how to equate that because of the training.